This is one of a series of 5 videos that looks at 2 seismic retrofit standards. One is the brand new FEMA P-1100, also known as ICC 1300, and the older Standard Plan A. Now, I was on the committee for both of those, and I'm going to compare the two so that you can see which one you'd like to use for your own house. The best way to understand this is actually to go to our web page, and then you come over here to FEMA P-1100, ICC 1300, comparing the two. Right here, it's the first drop down, and it'll take you to this page right here. And right here, you can see all 5 videos that make up this series. You can read all sorts of stuff, so you don't have to watch a video. You can just read about it, or you can say, hey, this looks boring. I don't want to even look at this at all. So here's all the information that you'll find in the videos, and it's much easier to access all the information off of this web page. This section of the video will give you some basic instructions on how to read the tables in FEMA P-1100. I think you'll find it helpful. Let's take a look and see how the tables in FEMA P-1100 work. So in this particular case, we have a 1-story house. It's light construction. Light construction just tells us what the house is made of. So in this case, it's got sheetrock inside, it's got wood siding on the outside, and the roof is just made out of regular shingles. It also tells us the house we'll be looking at is between 1,201 and 1,500 square feet. In our case, it's 1,350 square feet. Now it also tells us right up here, you'll see it says we length each of 2 brace wall sections required along each perimeter wall line. And that means we need to have 2 lengths of plywood. So here we have 12 feet over here, down here we have 12 feet, over here we have 12 feet, over here we have 12 feet. So along each wall line we need to have 12 linear feet, 2 pieces of it. Now the next thing we see is we come down and we see that the cripple wall height is between 1 foot 1 inches and 2 feet. And we come down here, and that's telling us that each panel needs to be 12 feet long. Remember, there's 2 panels. Each one is 12 feet long. Now we come over here, and the plywood is nailed with nails 4 inches apart. Now that's called the panel edge nailing. So that is the strength of the plywood is determined by the spacing and the size of the nails at the very top of the plywood, at the bottom of the plywood, and both of the sides. So that's how the plywood is nailed. Then we come over here and we see that each wall line needs 12 bolts. So if you look along here, those little purple dots, those are bolts. If you look at those, then those are the bolts. And if you counted those, there would be 12. And finally, there's something called a type E connector, which is also the Simpson L90. And each wall line takes 25 of those. So those are the little black marks right here. And if you look there, there would be 25 on each wall line. So this is all put here in the legend where you can see where it says 5/8 bolt. It says 4 inches on center plywood, and then the L90s are the little black hatches. So another thing I'd like to point out here is that in this case, when we put in all those bolts, we're going to need 48 bolts, 96 linear feet of plywood, and 100 L90 connectors, also called the type E connectors. This is all pretty expensive. The bolts and the plywood and the L90s, they cost $16,080 total. That's quite a bit of money. Not everybody can afford that. And if you look at this red lettering right here, you can see that the bolts can resist 18,000 pounds, and the plywood 9,120, and the L90s 23,125. Now, in a good retrofit, all these should be the same. If they're not the same, that means we put in too much of something. Next, we're going to be looking at how wasteful a FEMA P-1100 retrofit can be. So first thing I'd like for you to do is go to How To, then go down to Engineering, and then head over here to Engineering is Everything, and then you'll see some videos. I'd like you to watch this video. engineering cripple wall retrofits. That's going to explain everything you need to know about seismic retrofit engineering for cripple wall retrofits. And once you have that information, the next section will make a whole lot more sense. Let's see what happens when the capacity of the plywood and the bolts and the L90s are not balanced. So here we look at the total resistance of the plywood, 6,480 pounds. Now that is for all four sides. Then we come over here for all four sides. For the bolts is 72,000 pounds, and for the L90s is 92,500. Now remember, retrofits work as a system. So the first one that fails will be that which defines the entire retrofit. So in this case, as soon as the plywood fails, the entire retrofit fails. And so any bolts or any L90s that are in excess of this 36,480 pounds are redundant. They don't do anything. They're decorative. They don't help our retrofit at all. So what we find is that the difference between the first failure point and this right here is 35,520 pounds, which means we have 35,520 pounds of bolts that we don't need, and that costs $1,823. So this right here, this expense right here, is completely unnecessary because it's paying for all these excess bolts that we don't need. Now we come over here to the L90s. We have the exact same problem. Remember, we are only as strong as this 36,400 pounds. We have way more than what we need. In fact, we have 58,020 pounds more than we need. So these, all these bolts, all these L90s that make that much, 58,020 pounds, are completely redundant, and it's pretty expensive. That's 2,446 pounds, $446 of L90s that we don't need. And when you add those two together, this retrofit is $4,269, more expensive than what we really need, and a total waste of money.